watching something like this is.
Well, we are live. Hello, DC.
Hello, Dan.
I don't think we were expected to be live, and here we are live. So welcome. I am with C.McGuire, who's a neuroscience research background and is a student and an expert of how our brain works. And so today, DC, who's a friend of mine, and I are going to be talking about how to achieve easier sales and to have long-term success while using a smarter use of your brain. So we can get there. It's a hack to be able to get there by using your brain in a smarter way. So DC, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, I'm terrific. I'm so excited to be with you, Dan. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours.
And I'm a huge fan of yours, so thank you.
And I am excited because I feel from experience of private coaching and trainings and keynote speeches and all, is that this is all about empowerment. And this new brain information is going to be the new key to success in the future, so that people who are learning it now are on this leading edge and have this advantage. It's great to be able to share that with people, not in the way of psychology, because I'm not going to ask you about your toilet training, if that's okay. Not that I don't care, trust me, but maybe later. And we're not going to be.
I made a mess, DC.
Oh dear.
With the toilet training.
We'll talk about that later. Maybe I can help. We'll rewire your brain around that trauma. That's what we do anyway. So that's perfect. I'm sure we can help. And the thing is that with the brain, what we have now because of brain scanning technology is that we don't have to do support groups. We don't have to go into the past. We can just move forward, because the way and what interests me about this is that we're looking at the brain now instead of just guesswork. With psychology has done some good work, but there's a lot of guessing. It's kind of observational. And now with brain scans, we're looking at the brain like a machine.
Okay.
And the machine can be understood. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be a neuroscientist and understand it, with years of study and research. But it's like driving a car. Nobody ever, I'm guessing, I didn't know you at 16, but nobody probably tossed you the keys and said, "Hey, Dan, go drive the car." I mean, what would you say if they did?
Well, for me at 16, I would have said thank you.
Yeah, well, you're a precocious guy.
But here's the thing. At 14, which is when I really learned how to drive, I was a dishwasher, and I would take the trash out, and they would put it in the back of this pickup truck, and we'd have to bring it to the dumpster because they didn't want the trash around the restaurant because they didn't want rats and rodents and stuff. And so that was my practice vehicle, and I excessively dented both sides, the front and the rear of that truck from 14 to 16. So I was ready to go at 16. But I get your point of it's probably a bad idea.
Maybe dent free after 16. But the thing is that, if they just said to you, well, you know what? Come on, you've ridden in a car a million times. You've been a passenger. You must know how to drive the truck or the car. And we came into this world, we were born, and I don't know about you, but I didn't come with a user's manual.
No,
and here we've got this the most powerful machinery between our ears, and we were just supposed to guess at how to use it. And until we had brain scans, that's the best we could do.
Okay.
And when you look at what real estate professionals are involved with, they could use some guidance so that they could really get in there and avoid a lot of the problems and make things easier, more successful.
So DC, so I know that you take your insights in neuroscience and you help to solve, really complex business problems and political and education relationships, et cetera. And I know that you mentioned just now that there's been some recent discoveries in brain science that allow for personal and business success to become easier and more predictable. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I mean, haven't we all been waiting for things to get easier and more predictable? I mean, I love your whole program about consistent, predictable income.
Thank you.
Well, we can, to be able to do that, we want to have consistent, predictable behavior. We want to have predictable, consistent involvement with other people, our reactions with other people, with problem solving and that kind of thing. But we just couldn't before. Now, I actually went from medicine and the kind of allopathic treatments with brain chemistry to digging into what was going on when there started to be like shootings in schools and theaters and malls, and when the trade towers came down and wars in different parts of the world. I wanted to know, how are people using their brains so differently when they're doing harm and creating great misery from the people that I knew who were, I was actually on the team trying to develop a computer chip the size of your pinky nail to help paraplegics be able to use their computers, just using their brains. Sure. So I was I just was committed at a very deep level to find out what was going on. And of course, first things you look at, and you're probably thinking as well, there's gender, there's education, there's culture, there's religious traditions, there's all kinds of these external influences. And yet that didn't really tell us where this was going to happen and who was going to do it. So I finally, after all the research, I'll spare you all the details, but it came up with one particular neurochemical, and that's dopamine. Okay. Now, there are plenty of other ones, and it's complex, and they're all related. But dopamine, if we just focus on that one, we can take back our lives in big, significant ways, and we can get out in the world and be successful at our careers in ways we never thought possible.
So, when you're saying that you did the study on these tragic events, is that a good way to characterize that?
Yeah, that's right.
And what you found was that there was different reasons, and it was complex, yet the commonality in these events of I guess the action takers, the ones that perpetrated bad, was dopamine. Do I understand that correctly?
It was. Now, what I want to say too up front is that dopamine isn't the enemy. It's the right level of dopamine. Okay. You want dopamine. Dopamine feels good. It's good for a lot of reasons, and we want it. And not enough dopamine is also can be a tragedy.
Got it.
But
it's the right level.
Yeah, it's the right level. It's the balance. Okay. That's what it's all about. Too much. And here's what happened, just quickly. Sure. This part of the brain takes in the emotions. This is where we get excited about something.
So the front part of the brain for the
well,
listeners.
it's this mid part of the brain.
Okay.
It's where the amygdala is. It's where the emotions are processed, and it's the part that primarily puts out the dopamine that affects our thinking. Now, if we get too much dopamine, it actually literally blocks the pathways between all this emotion and the part of the brain that processes it, the human modern brain that would process it, that would give us an ability to analyze it, would be able to help us manage our behavior and our emotions, that would help us to see a big picture so we know how what we were doing was going to fit into, whether it's a deal or whether it's it's a national kind of policy or whatever it is. And that's where we have empathy. So if you look at, those are called our executive functions. And that's where we want to be operating. But when we have too much dopamine, when it redlines, I used to be a race car driver, and I know what that's like.
I didn't know that about you.
That kind of feels good, on the track. Yeah, that's all right. It sounds good. It feels good. But as a human being, that's not going to get us where we want to go. It'll get us into trouble. It costs us our immune activity to be able to protect us against viruses, bacteria, and dramatic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, things like that. So when we get up too high, it blocks that. It's like a road that comes to a dead end that's over a river. The bridge is out. You can't go there. So we're left acting like animals. Okay. All the resources are going to our bones and our muscles, away from our thinking brain, away from our immune system, to just either fight, flight, or freeze.
Okay.
When we do that, let's say, for instance, a great example in real estate is you get some calls where you've got an irate client, if you've ever had that, or once, so you at least have some concept of what I'm talking about.
I'm just talking today, but go on.
Well, thank you for validating that. Or you have someone who's really difficult about the details of a contract, or you get a message that the deal fell through. And we're just on this roller coaster, and all of that is dopamine, either the really good or the really bad. Do you want to try something right now to feel the dopamine?
Let's do it.
Okay. If you're comfortable with it, close your eyes. If not, it'll work anyway. All right. You go out. I see that. Mine are open so I can keep a track on you. Okay. You go out to the mailbox, or you go wherever you get your mail, pick it up, and you're sorting through, and you see there's a letter from your friends at the IRS.
Okay.
Okay. Now notice your breathing. You may have sweaty palms. And your brain is saying what?
I think the censored version is not going to let you. I'm not going to answer that question. It's appropriate. It's saying, "Oh crap."
Yeah, that's not quite the same, but we know what you're talking about. Yeah, and that's where your brain goes to, is the oh crap, and all the rest of your higher functioning processes have been just downgraded.
Okay.
Now let's try one more. Okay, class closed, you're driving along, and all of a sudden you see a bright light in your rear view mirror, a rotating light, and a siren.
Okay.
How you feeling?
Not great.
Yeah.
That same phrase came to my mind.
I'll bet it did. The real phrase. Yeah. Yes. Not the old crap. So this is what happens to you. This is dopamine. You have just had a rush, and it took you over in 1/100th of a second. Okay. That's how fast it happens, because from a survival point of view, and that's really what dopamine is all about, it has to grab our brain. It doesn't let us, like if we're driving down the road and there's a car coming at us, it doesn't let the scientist in our brain go, well, let's see the vector of that trajectory of that car and the speed it's going. I think it's going to be, I don't know. I think, no, you get the heck out of the way. And so you can't think of anything else. At that moment, you can't think about what's for dinner or
so
the
deal you like go in autopilot. Is that correct?
You're taken over.
Yeah.
You are totally taken over by dopamine. Now, in those situations where there's a snake or something, you want that to happen. However, that's over and done with, and then you go on. But if we're like that at the office, and the nature of the business of real estate in particular, which is why I have a special feeling for it, is that there's so much stress, so much anxiety, because it's all about money.
Yeah.
It's all about possessions, prized possessions. It's about status and identity and all these things that are loaded with emotion.
DC, let me ask you a question real quick. So how do we manage the dopamine? I mean, so we understand what dopamine is. We understand how it impacts us. It takes us over.
Yeah.
And it does so in less than an instant.
Yeah.
And we understand what causes it. And we understand that what we're looking for is a balance. So we don't want too little of dopamine and we don't want too much of dopamine. So how do we manage this?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? Because it's great to know about it. That's good. Mm-hmm. But if you can't take charge of it and make it work for you, what good is it to know about? So what I have discovered is that the first thing you want to do is have to be able to identify it.
Okay.
So how do you identify it? Just the way you did when you got the notice from IRS, or you saw the policeman in your rearview mirror, is that you say, oh, yeah, my shoulders are tense. My throat is tight. My abdomen is, feeling queasy, or whatever it is. Sometimes we have different kinds of signals, but that's pretty generally going to happen. And you start to feel like this. And so right away, that's a red flag. So that's number one. You need to know that's what it is. Okay. So you identify, go, I'm being overwhelmed by dopamine. Now, at that moment, we have a choice. We can either go dumb, which is a technical term, if you don't mind my using that, at that moment when, we want to be at our smartest, we want to be the most competent, whatever that situation is with a client or whatever the circumstances at home, doesn't matter. And we want to be able to think, well, so dopamine, we begin to take deep breaths. Take it right now. Just go ahead, Dan. Think about that, something that maybe that call you had today, whatever it is, and take wherever it's the oh crap feeling, you just take a deep breath in. Now, the way you know it's a deep breath is that it's not raising your shoulders. It's not like this. And that's beautiful because you can do this at a conference table.
Okay.
You can do this while you're making a presentation, while you're sitting across from the desk with the client, or showing a property. And because you're doing it in your down below in your diaphragm.
Okay.
And one of the really great things to do, if you do have a surface in front of you, is just put your arms in front of you like this. Lean forward a little bit. Now you're at a little bit of a slant from your seat.
Okay.
And now you can really get a big belly full of air and nobody knows. You don't want to do heavy breathing because that gives the wrong signal. But you can do it without you just breathe, but in through your nose, feel your belly go out, and make it slow and long. That is as important as deep is.
Okay.
So, and you don't have to think about special techniques. There's lots of great breathing techniques, which I can share, but you can't be thinking about that. You've got to be thinking about what else is going on, because what your goal is to get the oxygen into your brain, because we have sensors right here in the carotid arteries. And when we're breathing shallow and fast, we're not getting any oxygen up to our brain. And our brain says, we're in trouble. And what happens? Dopamine goes up. Blocks our thinking brain.
So in the like in the neck area, that's where the arteries.
Carotid arteries, yeah.
And that's in the neck area. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's right in here.
All right, fantastic. And so then when we take that deep breath in through our nose, and we extend our belly, and then we do it slowly, and then we exhale through our mouth, then that brings oxygen into our brain through those arteries.
And it tells the brain, see what you're doing, you're being very stealthy. This is the hack. Mm-hmm. This is the real hack, is that when your brain is worried, or it feels like it's under attack, or there's something threatening it in any way, real or imagined, what it does is immediately goes into short, fast breathing. So it takes all that oxygen, instead of going up this way, it's going down this way into the arms, legs, and can get you ostensibly out of harm's way. So by doing the long, slow breathing, you're telling your brain, yeah, I'm in the midst of this argument or disagreement or this challenge.
Or negotiation, or deal falling apart, or whatever.
Yeah, right? Whatever that is. Or I'm standing here with these people just kind of going crazy about little details, and they're driving me nuts. That what you're doing by sending this oxygen in the brain, it says, I hear all of these things that are problems and challenges, but I'm getting enough oxygen, so you know what? I'm going to just stay in my thinking brain.
Okay.
That's the mechanics of it. That's the beauty of it. You put enough oxygen in your brain, and you have access to your highest level of thinking.
And that regulates the dopamine, the oxygen. Is that what I understand?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Right. When there's enough oxygen, then it tamps down the dopamine, brings it into that healthy level.
Okay, so let me sum all this up, and then I've got some other questions for you, but just to make sure I understand this. So the dopamine is what, when it's elevated, it's what causes us to be overridden, and then sometimes not react or respond appropriately or in our very best sense. And it happens when we need ourselves, when we need our brains the most. In that tough negotiation, and the deal just fell apart, or whatever the case may be in real estate, which is, it is a very stressful industry. And so when we need our brains, that's when the dopamines are raised. And then to be able to lower that, and to be able to tell our brains that, hey, you're safe, let's increase your thinking level, then the breathing technique that you're teaching us is the access to be able to do that. Did I sum all that up correctly?
Okay. Well done.
Hey,
perfect.
All right.
The big pat on the back. That is exactly right. And you see how you've made it very clear and very simple, because you don't have the time to be trying. What was that technique? Oh gosh, I can't remember. Do I breathe? How long? Do I count? Do I have to do it through my nose, through my mouth? Do I have to do it, on lotus position or whatever? No, it's so simple and straightforward. And that's the power of it. And within 5 to 7 breaths, you've got your brain back.
How do you accommodate the fact that you're being overtaken? And is there a trick or a hack that you remind yourself to do this? Or I'm assuming that this is a habit for you, because this is your study, and And so if you're talking to somebody who's never done this before in the past,
yes,
what would you say to them to remind them to do this when they're being overtaken by, by that sort of brain that is an autopilot or, high level of dopamine?
The easiest way to do that is whenever you're starting to feel uncomfortable. The thought, the voice, sometimes you just pick up the phone and you can just hear that voice and I mean, I've had that experience. Probably.
I used to have a business partner. No. Tell that story at a different time.
Okay. But the beauty of it is, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Again, we can work on that later. That's what I do. The beauty of this is that it's across the board all the time, anytime, for any situation. Okay. Anytime you start to feel like you're drawing back, you're trying to protect yourself, or you're stepping forward to step into a situation ready to, do the fight part.
So that's the flight or fight that you're describing there. The step in is the fight. The step back is the flight. Is that correct?
Yeah, okay. That's exactly right. And even when it's just mental, but you can feel it. If you've lost this kind of softness about your openness, so you can listen, and you are magnificent at listening, Dan. But when you start to find yourself closing down in some protective way, that's your first sign. And then you notice it in your body. And you just go, oh. Now, a key point to this, too, is
hold on, DC, before you go on.
Yes.
I just want to acknowledge that I'm feeling great right now because I've been doing this breathing for the last 5 minutes you've been describing this. So I just I can physically feel it right now. I just want to acknowledge that, right? I know you're about to make a great point, but my goodness, I just want to acknowledge I'm feeling great. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And you know what? I'm going to let you just do that for the rest of your life.
There you go. I'm sorry, I overtalked you. Share your point with us. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
No. That's you're just a great. You're our poster child for this because that's the beauty of it. And if you go through life listening that way, you are able to listen more easily because you're not defended. You know that no one can really blindside you the way they used to be able to because you've got this technique. There are going to be all these things that you didn't expect and maybe you don't want, but you're not defenseless anymore. You're not at the mercy of what other people are going to say or do. And what I started to say was that this awareness of the tension, tone of voice, the way the facial muscles get, you'll start to recognize this in other people too. And the beauty of it is that when you stay like you've been in the last 5 minutes, is that you communicate at a nonverbal level a kind of comfort and safety where it is actually, I would tell you about a fellowship I did back at Duke where we were in this copper room and all these emotions were just recorded by machines. Whatever we were emanating of feelings, our participants were, we could pick them up because we are living in a soup of everybody's emotions and energy.
So you had, for the experiment, a copper room.
Yes. Walls, and floor.
Everything. Okay. And then you had people in that room not communicating externally, and you were measuring the vibrations from the copper or the energy from the copper, and you noticed what?
Well, we were showing them videos of certain emotions that we knew would be evoked by the images.
Positive and negative?
Oh, yeah, all kinds. Anger, happiness, all those kinds of things, fear. Sure. And we found that there was certain, on the readouts, we could see, just like with hearts, you can tell when there's a healthy heart. Well, we could tell what emotions were by the frequency of the signals and how high and how low they were. So we could look at a certain band and say, oh, they're feeling fear. Oh, they're feeling anger. And so what we got from that was that what we're doing with each other all the time, with clients, when we're showing properties, when we're in negotiations, when we're in meetings, whatever we're feeling inside is setting the tone for what these other people are going to feel, and they don't know what it is.
Okay.
So if we can do like you did with the breathing, stay calm, is that mitigates some of their anxiety, and we bring it down together so everybody's dopamine level, because theirs is all flip charts too. So we want to, it's reciprocal.
Yeah, you're going to pull them back to you. So these tools that you're sharing with us today, I'm assuming that these are going to allow for agents to close more deals, to build that loyalty, that trust, and, ultimately to create that CPI, the consistent predictable income, to be able to connect with that energy with another person. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Well, think about it right now. If you and I are sitting there, talking openly, relaxed, have full use of our brain, of our modern thinking brain, well, we are going to, there's going to be trust. There's going to be this kind of loyalty. We're going to listen to each other, and we're going to have use of this brain, remember, for analytical thinking, for problem solving, and we'll do it collaboratively. And so when you can do that, you maintain this high level of functioning together. And because of that, you're able to work together in a way where you're working for the same goal.
Yeah.
And they're, instead of feeling like they have to pull back on some things or challenge you on certain things, to kind of have a position or just their fear, because it is a big decision or a big purchase or whatever they're involved with, is that instead they can go like, here are the issues. What can we do about it? And there's no better way to come to a signing agreement than
because you're in unison, you're connected, and you're problem solving together.
Exactly.
So instead of taking that frustration and having them elevate, and then you elevate, and then them elevate, and now suddenly
the deal falls apart.
Well, there's zero connectivity, there's zero rapport, there's zero, solutions, and ultimately, the deal falls apart. So instead, if somebody comes at you, would you say just pause and breathe and just give it an opportunity for not only yourself to bring your energy down and your dopamine down, but also for them to bring theirs down as well? Is that?
You're absolutely right, because look at it right now where I'm looking at you, and I'm thinking, if I came to you with something that was really challenging and you immediately like on guard, now you're not thinking about the whole deal. You're thinking about protecting yourself. You've got too much dopamine instantly, as we know.
Or you really think about anything. You're really just
you can't.
Right. It's that overriding that you were talking about earlier that I described as autopilot. You described as overriding. And so if you're coming at me like that, you can't actually think because you're in autopilot.
No, all you can do is react. That's why it's called the animal brain. It's just reflexive. But if you take your 5 breaths while they're yelling or they're, first of all, they're going to think, oh my gosh, he's listening.
Yeah.
Because you're not primed to go to counteract whatever it is. You're there and you're calm. So there's not this hard surface to bounce against. There's like this, like open, I'm listening to you. You sound upset. I'm listening to you. And now you've got these 5 deep breaths, and whatever you come back with is going to be appropriate and helpful for solving the problem.
Yeah. And I find that typically in that situation, I address the emotion before I address the problem. If the emotion, well, probably in all cases, right? So I would say, DC, I feel as though if you're really frustrated right now.
Yeah.
And I understand. And I would be frustrated as well.
Yeah.
Let's solve this together. And so I would acknowledge the emotion. And I don't know if that feeds into that neuroscience or not, but what are your thoughts on that in regards to the way that you approach that?
Well, what you're doing is you're lowering their dopamine levels. I mean, if you hear them and you understand them and you appreciate what they're worried about or angry about, they don't have to be on guard. They don't have to be that, I always say that even a golden retriever, if backed into a corner and tormented enough, will bite, and they really don't want to.
Oh, not a golden retriever.
No, and certainly not your little doggy.
Yeah, oh, goodness, no.
But this is absolutely what that's the point, is that by acknowledging, even stating it out loud, that you understand. Now they feel like they're not under attack. They feel like they're safe, and when people feel safe, their dopamine levels are appropriate. So that's a brilliant way to handle it.
Thank you.
Straightforward.
So DC, so you coach, you train, you teach. You speak. How can, if I'm a real estate agent or a business professional or a human being seeking to improve, and have more insights to be able to develop personally, professionally, and to be able to use the brain in a manner that serves us, how can I get in touch with you? What resources do you have? Like what's available for me if I'm interested in that?
Well, you can reach me at DC MCGUIRE, DC McGuire, at wiremybrain.com. And that's probably the best way to do it. And what I really like to work with are specific issues, or concerns, whether it's for a corporation or whether it's for an individual. And see what it is, how the brain can be rewired, literally. I mean, this is powerful. This is really empowering. That's what's so exciting to me, is that it's permanent. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not like, how do we kind of fix this? And maybe you can manage it. This is like, how do we rewire the brain to have a completely different outcome from here on?
You said that you like to work with specific challenges. What would that somebody be challenged with, business or professionally, that you could most specifically help them with?
Well, I think one of the things that we look at is what the anxiety or stress is, or if there's some trauma background, or because we can put those emotions that just come up, we don't have to go over them. We can just rewire the brain to put it in a different part of the brain that isn't emotional about it. Looking at issues around marketing, about sales and how to address their particular market and issues within the firm, or how to develop a sense of real confidence to be able to speak out and speak up and be a problem solver, be a leader, whatever the goals are of the individual or the challenges in the team. And I love to give keynote speeches that are even just as brief as this, to just give people an idea of what's possible for them. It doesn't take a prescription. There's no trainer involved. You don't need special leotards. I mean, it's up to you.
I want to wear a leotard.
All right.
You don't want to see me in a leotard, trust me.
Now, speaking of trauma.
Well, thanks a lot, DC. We're gonna leave on that. DC experience of trauma of thinking of me in a leotard. So, DC, thank you very much. And if you are a viewer or a listener and you're looking for a keynote speaker to be able to help to, for your people to be able to get their personal best out of life, out of business, out of their job, to have that satisfaction and to create success together, I encourage for you to reach out to DC. She is a great, great resource. And if you are listening to this right now, I invite you to visit findyourpotential.life. That's findyourpotential.life for some courses that I teach, very much aligned with what we're talking about today. So that's findyourpotential.life, and you can learn more there. So thank you, DC, and I appreciate your time.
Bye, Dan.
Bye-bye.